We are live, of course, not financial advice, not just for educational purposes only. That's the only reason we're here. And as we go through this morning, of course, we had news last night. Let me see, I was getting back to my stuff here. If I can find it, there it is. We had news last night that moved the market around a little bit, but the prevailing theme is just a problem with NASDAQ more than anything. The Dow and the Russell. The Dow is only down. Let me see. Hold on one second. Got to get my colors right here. The Dow is only down 0.08%. So really didn't have much effect on the Dow, and the Dow is sitting above its monthly pivot. It is getting red candles on the 1 hour, so that's something to be aware of. It's, somewhat losing momentum on a larger time frame. So I would be aware of that fact just moving forward. And we will just play it level to level. The weekly didn't do much. I looked at some daily and quarterly before I got on, and I seen on the day that the NASDAQ touched it perfect overnight, but maybe it'll retest that today, and we will just see how that fares. I will show you that. For my intraday scalp traders, you had just a perfect spot right here, and then of course we just wick it on a 5 or 15 minute and take off. So just a perfect opportunity to buy here. But like I said, that was 12:30 my time. I was not looking at that at that time. So I'm going to be watching my bigger levels today. I will be sending out notifications in my Discord just at everyone if we get to a major level either way. It'd be 29,432 versus 29,3, and we know that's a big area for the NASDAQ. The ES, let's look and see how it's doing today. It's probably gonna be stuck in the middle because the Dow, it's down 0.3, right underneath that weekly pivot and still above the monthly pivot. One thing that I did note on the Q was last night we broke the weekly pivot, had this one little candle that closed on top of it, and then we fell. So that was a good shorting opportunity right there if you were paying attention. So what was funny was it gapped down at the open because of the news, goes across, and some part of Asia comes on, I don't remember which, and you get this massive rip up that fills this gap. And then that's one candle, one 15-minute candle, and then it immediately rolls over and dies for 400 points. So red candles, breaks the line, look out below. We still have red candles on the hourly over here. So I think today is just a day of, we can probably catch a pretty good move because I think it'll move around with all the news. I know that this morning I seen some headlines that Trump, was talking about, we're going to open the strait by force, yada, and blah, blah, blah. So we'll see how all that plays out. Who knows? That's why we have our levels, because if we try to guess that, we'll never get it right, ever. Let me see. Let's go look at the Russell real quick. And these are just the main indices that I'm looking at just to get an overall health of the stock market. So the Dow, the Russell, the ES, and the NASDAQ. Trying to reclaim the pivot for the week here. And that's kind of a test zone. On a bigger picture, the monthly, it still doesn't look amazing. So I would be more apt to look especially after the open, if we get a break of the pivot, to look south versus looking up. Now, if this just holds, I'm not going to do that. But if we get a break of the pivot, I will be looking down on the Russell. I know that oil popped off last night, of course, because who doesn't want to pay more for gas and goods? I mean, heck, that's what I'm here for. Let me see. Even though, you know, the strait is closed and everything, it really has stayed halfway reasonable. I think there'll be some problems downstream from this closure. It's kind of like COVID at first. It's not a thing, and then all of a sudden it becomes the thing. And that's kind of what I anticipate with petroleum products, but we'll see. America's pretty good at innovating and getting around issues. Yeah, that top on oil has been the top on the monthly, the R1. It just doesn't. Last night it touched it at midnight, which was the low on the NASDAQ. So you can see they're trading inversely. See if I can move this so I can see it. So this exact high on oil was at 1245, 1230, 1245, exactly when we put the low in on the Q. So you can see they're kind of trading. So the Q is heading down. This was heading up. As soon as this started down, the NASDAQ started up. So that's just kind of the tug of war that the markets are in, and oil's coming off. So the NASDAQ is trying to come off. So the NASDAQ is trying to get up. We'll just pay attention to this. And like I said, these are the major levels, and I will be throwing those out in Discord if we hit them, just alerting everyone saying, hey, we've hit these levels. They are important. Let's take a look at SMH and see what it did overnight. See if it's finding any reason to be positive or if it is not. And I don't have that weekly pivot generated yet. It'll do it at the open because this is an equity, so it will wait for the 8:30 session. You can see what we're doing over here on the monthly. We're holding S1. Well, I say holding. We are below it, but we are buddied up to it. So that'll be a crucial level to keep an eye on today as well, the 599.35. If it can regain. I seen something, a note earlier that I think like half of the Mag 7 was going to be a negative this year as far as, or maybe them as a group would be a negative as far as earnings to growth versus semis are semiconductor chips. So NVIDIA, MU, AMD, TSM, which is Taiwan Semiconductor, ALAB, all those will be what drives this market and what leads, because that's where all the money is going to go. So that's why I have a very close eye on SMH. And like I said, it's a little easier to play the bigger levels when you are just looking for a profitable trade versus the daily levels in the 4 hour. I was actually in my room on Discord and we talked about, I said, you never know, in the next 10 minutes we could get a crazy candle, yada, yada. So it was just one of those things that as soon as I said that, and then I logged off because we were watching this right here on the 4 hour to see if we could get a close above the pivot. And not long after I got out of the room, we had this really fast, aggressive candle to the downside. And that was, I think, even on a 5-minute candle, that was, yeah, I think it was maybe even a 2-minute candle. So only in 2 minutes, it had this major flush down from 940 to 670. So that was a 300-point flush just to come back up and kind of meander around the rest of the day. Didn't do a lot. Finally got some green candles at 11 o'clock. And that's what I talk about, that European close, 10:30 for me. Once it does that, the market can kind of pick its own way. But we were watching it on 4 hour levels. So these pivots generate every 4 hours, and they are very, very good for intraday trading. You just have to be fast. And you can see this candle range right here. This is that candle that I'm talking about. And that is a 5-minute candle. Massive wick all the way to S1, just as fast as it can be. And then it comes back up. So when I talk about being fast on intraday scalps, this is exactly what I am talking about. If you are not sitting there ready with your finger on the trigger, you're not going to buy that at 29,673. You're just not going to, because it's going to wick right down there, and then just it came right back up. And if I look at it on a 2-minute, let's just see how fast it was, because I believe even on the 2-minute, it was a solid candle. Let me see here. Get all my data populated. There it is right here. Yep. See, that was even within a 2-minute candle. So that's how quick that decision is. Very, very fast. So you have to be ready for that. And I mean, it's a perfect tag. It doesn't get any prettier. And then run away, retest that 4-hour pivot, and then higher it marches with green candles. So 4-hour pivots are very good to watch for intraday scalps. And as you can see on our 4-hour, where we are sitting right on top of this pivot currently, and that will be a spot that if you're watching this intraday, your first decision is right here on this pivot. If we hold, then we look for 819. If we break, we look for 585. For me personally, you know that I like to watch them get that first 15 to 30 minutes out of the way in the morning, unless we get a flush to a major level or a big rip to a major level. Then I want to use that to my advantage, but I don't want to get caught up in that first early morning chop personally, unless it makes a move that is sustainable that I want to capitalize on. So we'll watch that play. But just for me, the biggest things I will be just honed in on this week will be my weekly levels here on the NASDAQ and on SMH, just so I've got a better picture of what's happening. The other thing that will be of note will be the VIX volatility index. You can see it's popped up 1632. That is absolutely nothing. That 1711, that monthly pivot, is kind of the area of the top so far this month. When we had that bigger breakout of it over here, let me maximize that for you. When we had this bigger breakout of the VIX, that's when we had some turmoil here, and it was short-lived. But that's, if we get above that, you need to start paying attention, this 1711. And I will be alerting that if we do, just so you have it and know and understand, hey, this is a very important level. We are above it, so caution is warranted. And then we start looking higher to make sure that we do not have any takeoff of the VIX, because it'll be fast, it'll be aggressive. So that's kind of a warning sign if it gets up there, that things could be changing and we need to pay attention. I'm just looking back at the weekly at its highs to see if we have anything that correlates up towards this 1911 area would be a spot. So if we put just a bigger picture together, pay attention to SMH, the VIX, that'll really help us on the NQ understand what we are trying to trade and why we are trying to trade it. If we want to be risk on, or maybe we want to look to the short side, just depending upon how those are acting and what they're doing. The other one I want to touch on, of course, is NVIDIA. I don't know if Phil's in here. The other day we were talking on the phone. Phil is a contributor with commodities. But anyway, he's been trading his whole life. We were looking at things to buy, and I told him my opinion was to buy some NVIDIA, and he bought some call options on it, just some 30-day call options, and bought some shares, and he has made some money there. I helped him get out a half of it on Friday, somewhere over here. So he did really well there. think it was right. It was probably right here somewhere. He almost got out, top ticked it so far, but it could explode higher. And he'll be Monday morning quarterbacking me saying, why did we get out of half of that? But that is just a play that has been NVIDIA's consolidated forever. It has been needing some type of bounce, even if it's short-lived, but I would definitely keep a close eye on that. The rest of it is all just SMH, because that is all the semiconductors in a basket. So let's watch the NQ. Let's see what happens. We'll watch the ES. Gold, I have not looked at gold today personally, but just for curiosity, let's take a look. That monthly pivot has been the spot, 40.25. Retest of that is a good buying opportunity. A break of that, so if we get just a wick down, we touch, you want to be a buyer here. If it breaks, you're wrong. And a break of that could look lower for sure, especially down to that 30.55 area here, which is that bottom that has just carried across forever. But we'll see. We'll see what it does. That's your weekly S1. And that weekly S1 just happens to line up with all this bottom that it put in at the end of last month. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to tick gold on a bigger picture. If you're using the daily and 4 hour, play it how you play every pivot. So we're going to look to buy here on supports. We're going to look to be bearish below, bullish above until we hit a resistance or support. It's pretty easy to do if you just take your time. When it's just sitting here playing on the pivot, this is when your daily levels come in, because you can play your pivot as long as it holds on like a weekly, but then you flip over your dailies and you use those to scalp. So just draw a bigger picture is all I'm trying to ask you to do. I know I'm throwing a lot out there, but it will help you eventually in the long run to understand what you're trying to achieve, and you're not just trading just the NQ. You kind of understand a little bit more behind it, but at the end of the day, you can just trade the NQ and use the levels and you'll be fine. I just like to get a bigger picture and see what the market health is actually trying to do, kind of the internals of the market. So let's look at gold here on the 4 hours. I need to turn my chart down. It's loading too much data. Just reduce my days. You can see choppy overnight. You know, and that's the thing about gold. It has these kind of scary, erratic moves, and then they just come back and reclaim and hang out. We are below the 4 hour pivot now, so I would pay attention to that. Let's look at the daily pivot really quick and see how it looks. Much better loading there, Toss. Thank you. Yeah, just choppy in between the range. So that's when, okay, so we're sitting in between these levels. I know these two levels. I can flip over my 4 hour and scalp in between these levels on lows and highs on my 4 hours. So if you're trying to intraday trade it, start thinking that way. Watch your daily, watch your 4 hour, and let it make your decisions. And watch the break of major levels for support or resistance. So right now it's stuck in chop bill, kind of like it did all day Friday. It just chopped in between two levels. Thursday had a decent reclaim here. If you're looking at the 4 hour, this might have been an S1 or 2 that it was finding the end of that range and became a good buying opportunity for a run. And once you break the daily pivot, then especially if we're in here, we're just going to wait and see if we can achieve first target here. But right now, you'd have to flip over to your 4 hours and watch that if you're wanting to trade some gold. I will be excited to see what everything shakes out this morning. One thing I will note, and if you don't know what this is, go figure it out. It's called seasonality. And they track the seasonality of the markets based on certain metrics. So just your standard years, it'll show you what your strongest months are, what your weakest months are, all these metrics that are there. And it does kind of follow a pattern. Okay. It's very true. And you can see that seasonality come into play. July is typically a great month for the market and a very subdued month for the VIX. So when you look at seasonality in July, the VIX will trend and just get down to its lowest point, and the market likes to have good months. Come towards the end of July into August, there's usually a drastic shift in the VIX starts trending up and the market starts trending down. Why is that useful? If you start having breaks of major levels, those are great opportunities to leverage shorts. In my world right now, if I could see this market do anything, it would be for this inverse head and shoulders on the 15-minute take off and get up here towards these bigger resistances. And you can see it on the hourly chart as well. So you got a shoulder, a head, a shoulder. Does that play out? Who knows? We don't know. But if it would, which it's a bullish pattern, and we start marching up towards these major levels towards the end of July, those are great opportunities to start thinking, hey, if we get here, I'm going to take a short and let it try to play out. And as long as we don't get above a major level, as long as we get to it, that's our resistance, we can short that and let that play, and you can capture a lot of points that way. So that's just a longer term perspective. What will the market do? Who knows? It might flush all the way down to S2 today. We do not know, but we will be ready with our levels and understand. And like I said, if you're trying to intraday trade this, I will be calling out the monthly and weekly levels in the Discord. I'll be sending out alerts. Hey, we've hit this, we've hit monthly S2 on NQ, ES, whatever. So that way you will see, or at least have an understanding of, we're at a major level of support or we're at a major level of resistance. What do we do with that idea, especially if we're intraday trading it? So just keep that in mind. I just want to make sure that you're well aware of the bigger picture. And then on your scalps, you know how to use the levels. Take your time, wait for a good setup, wait for it to find an S1 or an S2, use that to your advantage, or find an R1 or an R2. And at this point, we're down 330 points on the Q. You really just have to watch the daily today and see if we can get a retest of this bottom right here, this 5. The low is 542, the pivot's at 527. So keep that in mind on the day. Just create an alert and let yourself know that this is a spot that if it gets to, I want to know about it. And that could be a good play if it wants to get there and do that. Because I will take that trade unless the VIX is really getting crazy and the Dow and the Russell's chasing. Then it makes it feel like, hey, I want to make sure that I've just got a good stop loss right here and let this play. But let's see how the day kicks off. I'm going to jump over into my Discord room and we will be ready for the market open in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to take a quick break. Like I said, I'll be in my Discord live. You can follow me there and we will watch this market open in about 10 minutes. I will be back. And as always, we will talk soon.